Hi everyone, I'm Dr.Animaction. Welcome to my latest studio retrospective, where we'll be taking a look at one of the undersung heroes of the animation of yore, Nelvana. I'd planned on this next retro being probably Filmation, but we lost Nelvana this year, or what would have been this year if I'd done this video when I'd originally intended, and I thought a tribute to their 50 plus years of history would be more appropriate. Before we jump in though, I want to mention that for the foreseeable future, I'm not exactly on a schedule, obviously, and the videos will come as I get them out. I also don't have any particular episodes planned, so if there's something you want to see in one of my standard series, put it in the comments. And with that said, let's take a trip back to 1971 and journey through a half century of animation history. The story of Nelvana begins with three guys named Michael Hirsch, Patrick Lubert, and Clive A. Smith. Hirsch's family had immigrated to Toronto, Canada when he was 3, and then to New York, where he developed an interest in media watching underground cinema. This led to his attending college for film studies, eventually ending up at York University, where he met his future partners. He initially met Patrick Lubert, another aspiring filmmaker and Toronto native, in 1967. The pair found work at what I can only assume is some kind of production company called Cineplast, since there's pretty much no information about them out there, creating animated shorts for Sesame Street. What the pair really wanted to do, though, was create a Canadian film industry, since there wasn't really one worth noting at the time. Toward the end, they, together with fellow York University alum Jack Christie and Peter Durdney, founded a small production company called Laugh Arts, where they intended to produce experimental live-action short films. Their first big project, though, was a documentary focusing on the history of Canadian comics from the World War II era for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or CBC. The project was a huge effort requiring extensive research and investigation, during which they developed a love for the mostly lost Canadian comic history. They even acquired a huge private collection of original Bell Features publications, art and comics, and, more importantly, the rights to both reproduce them and create new original works. I wanted to find some more information about anything Laugh Arts made between 1967 and 1971, but other than the 22-minute segment for the CBC show Telescope, there's almost nothing out there. Every search I made just referred to them as the predecessor to Nelvana, so sorry about that. Another part of Nelvana history that isn't really clear is when animator Clive A. Smith came into the picture. He was a British animator who moved to Toronto in 1967 to work for Warner Brothers subsidiary Vitaphone on animated shorts and commercials, I think. I see several sources that refer to him as working for Vitaphone, though there's a big empty spot on his IMDb credits list between the start of his animation career working on the Beatles and Lone Ranger cartoons for Hallis and Batchelor Studio in London and his first Nelvana projects. I'd also seen mention of him having worked on the Ralph Bakshi written and directed Rocket Robin Hood for Krantz Films, but I don't see any official credits for that. Even going through several episodes of the show only gave me the typical 60s fade to black with no ending credits to speak of, so I'm writing this one off as not true. I probably shouldn't have mentioned it in that case, but it gave me the chance to mention a Ralph Bakshi creation that I wasn't really familiar with, so there you go. Another part of the story that's not entirely clear is how Hirsch and Lubert came to meet and work with Smith. It's pretty commonly agreed on that he created the original Laugh Arts business card, but no progression from that first interaction to full-time collaboration. I guess if we knew more about what Laugh Arts produced during this time, we'd know more about this early relationship. But it is what it is. Most of the Laugh Arts history out there focuses on that comic project I mentioned. What there is to find across multiple resources states that at some point in 1971, an advertising executive told them their company name and business card, which featured a guy in a suit on one side, and the same guy in a suit with his pants pulled down on the other, unprofessional. This feedback resulted in the dissolution of Laugh Arts, and in July of that year, Nelvana Films was founded by the trio of Hirsch, Lubert, and Smith. Oh, and also at some point during this period, Hirsch, Lubert, and fellow Laugh Arts founder Jack Christie, who shared an interest in alternative films, created and released Voulez-vous coucher avec God? Or for us Americans, Do You Want to Sleep with God? Which was a counterculture film commenting on religion, politics, and other prevalent issues of the era. Lubert also wrote and directed a film called 125 Rooms of Comfort, another subversive for the time movie with a gay, cross-dressing main character and the abuse and persecution he faces from a homophobic society. Neither film had anything to do with Laugh Arts or Nelvana as far as I can tell, even though they were released in 1972 and 1974 respectively. But it's an interesting starting point for the people involved considering where they went. Give them a watch if you want to see a trippy movie with some early examples of their animation work, or a darkly emotional journey through an unexplored time and culture, if you can find it. Oh, and adults only on those. Neither is exactly kid-friendly. Drawing on their love of old comics, the company took its name from a 1940s character, the first female Canadian superhero called Nelvana of the Northern Lights. Under this new name, there honestly wasn't a lot going on for them during those first several years. Most of the earliest output from Nelvana seems to have taken the form of live-action short films, with the first few being Queen Street West in 1973, Apple Cider Time in 1975, and Maple Spring in 1977. No idea what any of them are about, since, try as I might, I couldn't actually find them. Their first widely seen work, however, was a series of 10 shorts called Small Star Cinema that combined live action and animation and appear as part of various CBC children's programming between April 1974 and May 1975. Most of those seem to be lost at this point, with only a single episode called Mr. Pencil Draws the Line being easily watchable. You can check it out here on YouTube. These led to a 1975 Christmas special in the same format called Christmas Two-Step, but that one's no easier to find than any others. It wasn't until 1977 that Nelvana produced their first major piece of animation with the fully animated A Cosmic Christmas, which not only aired in Canada, but also made it across the border to us in the US as well through syndication via Viacom. This one received some minor attention at the time and is still easily watchable today, having gotten a couple of VHS releases. The most important thing this release did for the company, though, was to get them on the radar of George Lucas, which we'll come back to in a minute. The next release from the company came to the US and Canada in October of 1978. It was another holiday special, this time for Halloween, called The Devil and Daniel Mouse. It's based on Stephen Vincent Benet's short story, The Devil and Daniel Webster, about a man who sells his soul to the devil and then hires a lawyer to get him out of the arrangement. You probably recognize the concept more from that Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors episode where Homer sells his soul for a donut. Anyway, this received a lot more media support than A Cosmic Christmas did, with a companion storybook and a story album version being released. Oh, it was also notably the first appearance of the Nelvana logo featuring a polar bear, which the company would use through its dissolution. Just over a month later was when Nelvana really hit the big time with the release of the Star Wars Holiday Special. Sure, that special is widely recognized as terrible, but Nelvana is associated with its single redeeming quality, the animated segment called The Faithful Wookiee. I know we've all seen it, probably, but for any who haven't, it was the first official Star Wars cartoon, written by Lucas and featured the first on-screen appearance of Boba Fett, who was voiced by prolific Canadian actor Don Franks. This part of the special is so beloved that even though legend tells of Lucas trying to wipe the special from the face of the planet, it's still widely available to watch, even streaming on Disney Plus as The Story of the Faithful Wookiee. So if you haven't seen it, you can do so there. The company finished out the decade with a couple more TV specials, including a take on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet called Romy-O and Julie-8, and a pair of holiday specials called Intergalactic Thanksgiving and Easter Fever. The 80s, though, was about to see Nelvana become a household name. I won't be covering all of their output because that's quite a bit of material, but we will definitely hit the highlights. The 1980s saw a lot of diversification from Nelvana, as they not only continued their work on TV specials, but also branched out to full series, commercials, and theatrical films. Technically, they did some commercials in 1978 and 9, but the majority of their work in this area was limited to the 80s and early 90s. They started the decade with a few of these, as well as a couple of TV specials, but mostly went quiet until 1983. When they did start making noise again, it was loud and fast and took the form of the company's first theatrical effort, Rock and Rule. Released in Canada on August 12, 1983, it wouldn't see any theatrical release in the US until the next year. That release was very limited, though, and most people who got to see it at the time did so on HBO. The movie had a lot going for it, with its dystopian setting, a who's who of Canadian voice actors, including the previously mentioned Don Franks, and a soundtrack with performers like Debbie Harry, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, and Cheap Trick. It was produced on an estimated budget of $8 million, according to IMDb, and made an epic worldwide gross of right around $30,000. It's not exactly getting things started on the right foot, but the movie did get mostly positive reviews and a few home releases that did better for it, but it still didn't make much of a mark at the time. It's pretty beloved now, though, with a significant fan base, but it kind of led to the company sticking to more reliable, kid-friendly animation after that. Fortunately for them, that kid-friendly animation came in two major forms that same year. Specifically, the forms of a bumbling cyborg detective and a berry-scented, dessert-themed little girl. Saturday, September 5th of that same year saw the wide release of Inspector Gadget. Following the airing of a successful pilot from Deke the previous December, Nelvana produced 65 episodes of the series between September and December of 1983 and was hugely successful, though Nelvana didn't continue their involvement beyond season 1. Their output for the year consisted of a pair of specials, with The Magic of Herself the Elf being released on July 30th and Strawberry Shortcake Housewarming Surprise on March 31st. The combination of Gadget and Shortcake, along with a couple of live-action efforts and the educational Mr. Microchip and the exercise show 20-Minute Workout, must have been enough, though, to offset the poor performance of Rock and Roll, since the company kept on going. 1984 didn't see a ton of output from the company, though, with just a single Strawberry Shortcake special called Strawberry Shortcake and the Baby Without a Name, a Canadian live-action kids program called The Edison Twins, which lasted for 6 seasons and featured Corey Haim but is practically unknown to us here in the U.S., and the pilot for what would later that year become a Deke series, The Get Along Gang. 1985, though, saw them start their involvement with what would become another long-running series, as well as a return to one that had been very important to them in the past. The latest of their Strawberry Shortcake specials was released on March 29, 1985, entitled Strawberry Shortcake Meets the Berrykins, introducing a whole new branch of toys to the property. That same day, though, saw the North American theatrical release of the first installment of another major franchise with the Care Bears movie. This one offered some redemption in the wake of Rock and Roll, bringing in almost $23 million on a budget of $2 million. That was a huge success, making Nelvana a force to be reckoned with amongst the animation producers of the 1980s, but it wasn't their last home run of the year. Doubling down on that success, a continued relationship between the company and George Lucas resulted in not one, but 2 animated series this year, with the simultaneous releases of Ewoks and Star Wars Droids on September 7th. Both series were well received and pretty fun, making them a win for cartoon fans, Star Wars fans, and animation fans in general, as it gave Batman the Animated Series powerhouse Paul Dini a chance to continue refining his craft on 14 of Ewok's 26 episodes. The studio rode this new wave of success into 1986 with a follow-up to the Care Bears movie called Care Bears Movie 2, A New Generation, along with an ongoing animated series in syndication called The Care Bears Family, which would end up running for 49 episodes over 3 seasons. This was in addition to the continuing second season of Ewoks and several direct-to-video releases in support of new toy brands, like 2 specials for Mad Balls, another 2 for the short-lived talking doll Cricket, and 1 for My Pet Monster that would produce a full series the next year. There was also one final entry in the Star Wars Droids canon in the form of an hour-long special called The Great Heap. All of the output from 1985 and 86 either tied directly into an existing merchandise line or resulted in one, and with the second Care Bears movie bringing in $8.5 million at the box office, Nelvana was riding high. Oh, and did I mention they did the animation for The Three Amigos, which is a movie I absolutely love? Because they did that too, specifically the campfire scene where the Amigos sing with their horses. In 1987, the focus shifted slightly, though, with the company releasing a safe bet theatrical movie in the form of the Care Bears Adventures in Wonderland, but also trying their hands once more at live action with a second theatrical release. Burglar was a movie starring Whoopi Goldberg as a thief for hire who takes a job helping a dentist get some jewelry back from her ex-husband, and in the process getting dragged into an antics-filled conspiracy. It was a really well-done movie and a lot of fun to watch, as it also featured early appearances by John Goodman and Bobcat Goldthwait. It was also a small success for the company, earning $16.5 million on a budget of $12.5 million. It should have been a bigger success, since how can you not love those 3 actors, but oh well. They also had the My Pet Monster series I previously mentioned. This video is going to get really long though if I keep up this pace, so let me just do a rundown of how they finished out the decade. Well, they only made a single other theatrical release with Babar the Movie in 1989, which was kind of a flop, making $300,000 on a $1.3 million budget. There was a Care Bears Christmas special with Care Bears The Nutcracker Suite in 1988, and the animated intro to the Harry Anderson starring TV movies Spies, Lies, and Naked Thighs, also in 1988. They had a second live-action release with the TV movie Rocket Boy. This one was about a video store clerk that lives a second life as an intergalactic crime fighter. It starred one of my favorite SCTV alums in the main role too, with Doug McKenzie himself, Dave Thomas, as Rocket Boy. The company released a live-action series starring Mr. T called TNT, and an animated one that year with Clifford the Big Red Dog. 1989 saw the premiere of the Babar series, spinning out of the previous year's theatrical release, and 1989 ended the decade with another personal favorite based on the blockbuster film of the same name, Beetlejuice. What was happening on the business side of the house throughout the decade? Not much, as they were still owned and operated by the founding trio, and since they owned the rights for Care Bears and Babar, they were in good position on that end. Not a bad decade on the whole for the studio. But that's where I'm going to leave it for this video. I'll finish up the history and legacy of Nelvana in a part 2. Before that gets here though, I'll probably try to put out a couple of shorter format videos like the Personnel Office or Deep Dives just to get fully back into the swing of things. For now though, thanks for watching and sticking with me. Stay tuned and stay tuned, as in cartoons. Later.